Good afternoon, guys, gals, non-binary pals. Today I'm going to be talking about some mini little theories I've been having in relation to Sylvanas, Bwonsamdi, the old gods, Vol'jin, all that good stuff. And it's going to be kind of long form, unscripted rambling. Like, I have some notes here, so like if you see me like looking off to the side, I'm looking at my notes just to make sure I'm covering things I want to talk about. But I tried scripting this video and doing it that way, but it just sounded really, really derpy and awkward because, when it comes to theories, and I'm good with scripts when someone else gives one to me, but with my own theories, it's just better if I, ramble about them with a little bit of guidance from notes and whatever. So I'm not gonna script it, just gonna kind of go off on a bit of a tangent. Also, one little warning before I get into this is that I'll be going into some minor spoilers. If this image wasn't kind of spoilery enough, or if you're not spoiled by this image, then good, you don't know what it is. But there are some minor spoilers that go into a quest chain related to Talanji, Bwonsamdi, and the Darkspear trolls. If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you'll get it upon hitting revered with the Zandalari Empire, so you should be almost there anyway. And I was talking about the Azshara Warbringer and some other stuff, which is stuff we've all seen already. But yeah, let the theory crafting commence. Alright, so the first thing that stuck out to me was when we did the quest chain where we took Vol'jin's ashes to Tal'Dazar after getting them from the Echo Isles and fighting off Zalazane, is that Bwonsamdi wanted to communicate with Vol'jin, and he said, come out of that urn or whatever, and then when Vol'jin wasn't there, Bwonsamdi was like, oh shit, really? And then he's like, the boss ain't gonna be happy. The first thing that came into my head, and probably your head as well, and most people who were seeing this, is that who the hell is Bwonsamdi's boss? He has a boss since when does he have? Who could possibly be above Bwonsamdi? Well, he's not an all-powerful being necessarily. He's a very powerful being. He's the Loa of Death, but Loa are kind of wild god spirits that bridge the gap between our world and the spirit world, to my knowledge. So who could be above that but the old gods? Now, I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the one downside of not scripting, so I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Before I get to my speculated tie between Bwonsamdi and the old gods, I think Vol'jin made Sylvanas war chief because Bwonsamdi told him to. Think about this. Vol'jin's a shadow hunter, so he has close ties with the Loa, and Bwonsamdi, being the Loa of Death, becomes more powerful with death around him, with souls and all that stuff. So, if Vol'jin was dying, who better to take up the mantle of leadership and, drive forth a lot of war and death and conquering, but Sylvanas? Even when she's creating Forsaken, she's creating death, which is good for Bwonsamdi. When she sparked forth this massive war and burned Teldrassil, she killed almost 1,000 people just in the tree alone, not counting the ground forces that came to respond. Being the Loa of Death, Bwonsamdi is probably very much aware of someone who's capable of causing that kind of damage. So, when Vol'jin said, the lowest spirits have granted me clarity, and they whisper a name, I honestly think Bwonsamdi was saying, yeah, make Sylvanas the war chief, or something like that. Because if it really was the Loa, then what Loa in their right mind would want to make Sylvanas the war chief? They're wild gods, about life and nature and various other things. But then of course there's death. If there's any Loa who would want Sylvanas in charge, it would be him. Even Lillian Voss says it doesn't take a master prophet to deduce that anything that Sylvanas does is for her own benefit and to make more Forsaken, which involves death, something Bwonsamdi would be happy with. Now, when Bwonsamdi says he has a boss, the first person that comes to my mind is an old god. It took me a second to think, of anybody. I'm like, oh shit, who else can really be above the Loa? I first thought was the old gods. The Loa, they're primordial, wild god spirits. They're old and they're powerful. But you know who pretty much has old and powerful in their name? The old gods. They were sent here by the Void Lords to corrupt the Titan spirit, so they've been here for a very, 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 very long time. In my little headcanon possible theory here, I think it's Yogg-Saron, the god of death, who either enlisted or created Bwonsamdi to carry out his agenda on the surface world. Because Yogg-Saron and the other old gods, they might not have much of a presence on the surface world. They're kind of trapped in their prisons, minus when they kind of broke out. But they're in their prisons for the most part. Doesn't mean they don't have influence. They all influence the land one way or another. Cthulhu and N'Zoth, they have, acolytes and servants. Even N'Zoth now has the Naga, which I'll get into in a little bit. Yogg-Saron was kind of escaping his prison a little bit, and he was corrupting things around him. So, you know, it doesn't seem far out of the ordinary that he would try to sway to his side, or at least, you know, team up with someone who can bridge the gap between, you know, the spirit realm and the living realm, and actually walk on this earth in a corporeal form. My thought is maybe he made a deal with Bwonsamdi that says, you know, like, cause a lot of death and stuff to serve me and, you know, and feed my power. Bring me big souls, because big souls is power. Sounds like Dark Souls now. Bring me great souls for great power, and, you know, let it fuel your own power to further serve me. Maybe that kind of thing. Maybe it was Yogg-Saron's influence that made Bwonsamdi tell Vol'jin to make Sylvanas the war chief. Hear me out. At the end of Icecrown Citadel, the story was called Edge of Night, which Noble and Kalis and a bunch of other people got together and made a beautiful machinima of, so go check that out if you haven't seen that. But basically, after Icecrown Citadel and Arthas was killed and the Lich King was replaced, Sylvanas didn't see any reason to go on anymore, so she hurled herself from Icecrown. Now, before she was rezzed by the Valkyr, she impaled herself on Serenite, which is the hardened blood of Yogg-Saron. And a lot of people thought that this corrupted Sylvanas, because Sylvanas changed, not didn't change, but like, she got even more evil. Like, after Wrath of the Lich King, after she lost her purpose and had to find a new one. Some say that she was corrupted by being impaled on the Serenite and coming into contact with the blood of Yogg-Saron. Is that possible? Of course, but my first personal thought is that maybe Yogg-Saron got a little extra sneak peek, an extra look at Sylvanas when that happened. You know, ooh, those water elementals look cool now. Got a taste of her essence, maybe? Like N'Zoth did of Azshara? Maybe he got a little taste of her, saw who she was, if he didn't already know her, because, you know, he's the god of death. But got a little extra look at her, what she's capable of, her wants and desires, what kind of role she can play in the world of the living and the unliving, and how she could serve him. Maybe he said to Bwonsamdi, if he didn't already know about her being the Loa of Death, that, hey, keep an extra eye on this one. You know, this being can serve us pretty well. But maybe at that point, she probably got some attention by killing all those people in Gilneas and making all those Forsaken, like in the events of the Cataclysm. And then, finally, when the time was right, Bwonsamdi saw his opportunity and said to Vol'jin, like, hey, put her in charge. Please think about it. Bwonsamdi isn't really the kind of guy to physically get his hands dirty and get involved. He doesn't have to. He manipulates and he manages, you know, death and spirits and all that stuff from his realm. We don't really see him too much out in the open. Like, right here, he's kind of in our world, but it's in a weird necropolis-y void area that kind of bridges the gap between, you know, corporeal and incorporeal realm. And in the battle, you know, during Zandalari Forever, that scenario, we see him knocking about, but only to fight Zul and Mithrax, who's a big fucking deal. So what better opportunity for a schemer to do some good scheming, to put Sylvanas in charge to create death to serve him and Yogg-Saron, his potential master. Ooh, kind of feeling like Pyromancer with all this theory crafting going on here. Long live the Tinfoil Crusade! Anyway, along with having a tie to Yogg-Saron, I was thinking Bwonsamdi might also have a tie with N'Zoth. Now, of course, the old gods, they might not all be bestest friends, but they have similar goals and similar struggles. They're in prison, they want to break out, they want to destroy the children of the Titans, they want to maybe even destroy the Titans as well. But they also want to corrupt the world soul of Azeroth. They have the same goals, essentially. Different methods, but I guess you could say, yeah, they kind of work together. You know, servants of one old god probably won't object another old god. So it's not weird to think that Bwonsamdi might kind of be subservient to all the old gods. But N'Zoth in particular came to my mind, and I know I'm not the only one. Noble's video, Krendor's video, and somebody else, I forget who. As soon as we saw the Azshara Warbringer, and we heard N'Zoth's voice say,
Deal. I like deal.
Who are you?
I immediately thought of Bwonsamdi, and so did those two. Because they actually said it, Bwonsamdi! Now I know the whole deal with the devil trope is a very common one in these stories and in pretty much any story ever for a very long time. That's not a new concept. But in Warcraft, N'Zoth might have been like the OG in terms of, you know, that kind of deal making. Maybe he could pass that quality down to his servant, Bwonsamdi. You know, N'Zoth is canonized as being the weakest of the old gods. So, while they all use their influence and their corruption, N'Zoth is specifically known as the Corruptor. His specialty is hanging back, waiting and biding his time, using others, making deals. Because N'Zoth is powerful, but his presence on the surface isn't powerful enough to really do anything. He has to influence and get in the minds of other people, make deals with other people to kind of bind them to his will to carry things out. Like with Azshara. She gave him the option. She's probably the only person who's ever bamboozled him like that. You know, they made a deal. He basically just said, serve me and do my bidding so you'll live. Not really much of a deal. Azshara bamboozled him and was like, yeah, I'll serve you, but I'm going to be a queen, not some slave. Naturally, he was kind of pissed at that, but you know what? She's still serving him. So he was okay with it. I think it's possible for N'Zoth to have a hand in Bwonsamdi's actions as well as Azshara. With Azshara, you know, and her massive power and her massive army of Naga, and, you know, all the acolytes he has, and managing Bwonsamdi, making deals with him and working with Yogg-Saron, all that together, I think there's a lot more ahead of us than meets the eye. Because there's definitely no old gods in BFA. But I think with the faction war and, like, the conflict between the Alliance and the Horde, and, all, you know, all the infighting that went on with the Zandalari and Zul, and the impending Naga invasion, because it was said that Azshara was going to be a boss. They told us that at BlizzCon in November, and we even got a preview of her in Shrine of the Storm, which is pretty cool. So Azshara, gonna be a problem. Faction war, that's a problem. Zul and Gahun's forces, gonna be a problem. And the fact that even though Sargeras wanted to destroy, you know, Azeroth so that the old gods couldn't corrupt the world soul, he did half a job. Is bleeding the planet dry, slowly but surely. And the old gods aren't getting any weaker as a result. So all those factors together, I think that might be what pushes Azeroth to the brink of her third death. This is a very strange theory, I'm sure. It's probably not true, but it's, you know, something I thought of. Azeroth's first death, the Sundering. The land was completely split apart, the Well of Eternity ripped everything apart. Second, the Shattering, or the Cataclysm. When the world was not really ripped apart, but it was ripped a new one, and a lot of shit went down to try to bring forth the Hour of Twilight, which didn't quite happen, but it almost did. Now the third death. Azeroth bleeding out from the Sword of Sargeras. The Naga and Zul and Gahun and the Blood People and the Horde and Alliance conflict, ripping the planet apart metaphorically and almost literally. That might be what brings in the hour of Azeroth's third death, and that might be enough to either distract us long enough or weaken the planet enough, the old gods to break out of their prisons, and we may very well see near the end of this expansion something that leads us into an old god Black Empire themed expansion, if we're not going there already. Hopefully there's going to be at least 3 major content patches. You know, launch will be Gahun, 8.1 will hopefully be Naga, and then 8.2, who the hell knows, and maybe 8.3, maybe that's when we'll do old god stuff, but I feel like old god stuff can't really be handled in half an expansion. Like in Wrath of the Lich King, Yogg-Saron was like a side story in Ulduar. That was a patch. Cthulhu in Classic, granted storytelling and developing wasn't amazing in Classic, but, you know, Encourage and that was Cthulhu dealt with. And in Cataclysm, it was mostly like old god cultist stuffs. So like you need more than just a patch to properly do an old god story, in my opinion, especially if you're going to base an expansion theme around it. Which as of now, it's not, because there's definitely no old gods in battle for Azeroth. But yeah. Also, Bwonsamdi could have been showing off the deal-making skills that he learned from N'Zoth when he bamboozled Rastakhan, or should I say Rastakhan bamboozled himself, because who else thought that was kind of silly? Once Rastakhan just saying, oh yeah, give me some power and I'll bind my entire bloodline to you. Like, to me that just seemed like this is obviously a bad idea and it's obviously not going to be worth it. But, whatever. Plot armor, I guess. It makes for events that build up to fighting Zul and Mithrax and Uldir, so can't complain because that raid looks pretty cool. But yeah, that's enough rambling and theory crafting and tinfoil hatting for now. It's not really something I do too much of. I'm trying to do a little bit more lore theories and stuff. Like I enjoyed when I did Saurfang. What if Saurfang stops Sylvanas? I talked about what is Blizzard's plan for Sylvanas. You know, I'm trying to get a little bit more into lore, but like usually super theory crafting isn't my thing, but I can definitely see where it's a lot of fun, and it really gets you thinking, especially when Blizzard's storytelling recently hasn't been bad, necessarily. It's just that we don't get a lot. They kind of, like, spoon-feed us, like, one at a time. Like, when they gate stuff off, or when they, you know, whether it's by week or by patch, we kind of have to guess and fill in the blanks, like, what could possibly happen next. It's not like they're giving us everything all at once. We're just kind of theory crafting to fill in the details. We're literally theory crafting to know what the next step in the story is, because it's not given to us. So yeah, let me know what your guys' theories might be. Were mine stupid? Were mine cool? you want to hear me talk about some more of this stuff in the future. Sorry if this format was weird and rambly. It's really all I know how to do very well. Maybe I'll work on that in the future. But yeah, until you see me again, thank you for watching, and live well.